Hey guys, welcome to the lunch table. We're your hosts, Dylan and Akram. We're the podcast that covers everything you love in entertainment. For today's episode, we have something a little special. Since Andor just released, we actually want to come back to Star Wars a bit. If any of you have followed us from our first season, we did kind of like a Marvel's What If scenario with Star Wars. So this is kind of our sequel to that. So we have some fun little theories that we have in the world of alternate universe building of Star Wars. So Akram, why don't you give us your first scenario?
Yeah, so welcome everybody. Yeah, my scenario actually is going to involve Grogu and the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order game. And so what I thought about was how can you affect the story but also continue the timeline a little bit and not affect too much of the timeline to keep sequences in order as well. So I was thinking, what if at the end of Jedi Fallen Order when they found the holocron, right, or the crux or whatever the hell you call it, what if they tracked down Grogu, right? Grogu was in captivity and they were
Mm.
the ones to find Grogu, right? So this is 14 years before A New Hope. And so what happens is they find Grogu, they get him on board to the ship. And so what happens here is that you kind of mix elements of the Obi-Wan series where instead of Leia, it's Grogu, and the Inquisitors are kind of trying to capture these people and Grogu. And you also mix the Mandalorian where you have Jedi elements, right, in the Mandalorian. So those still come into play, except you have the cast and crew of Jedi Fallen Order. Um, so how will that play? Uh, what will it affect? Perhaps maybe Yoda will actually help out Grogu a little bit later on. Maybe they'll see Yoda or something. I don't think it'll really affect the main story too much. Probably it'll affect the Mandalorian, but I don't think it'll affect the main story all that much. Certain characters like Ahsoka probably won't come in the mix with Grogu or Mando. I don't know. So what
Hmm.
what do you think might happen in that scenario?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, it's interesting to think about like where Grogu was before Mandalorian too,
Mhm.
because I think Jedi Fallen Order takes place how many years
14 years before A
after
New Hope.
14 years. Okay, so yeah, there's still a significant amount of time before Mandalorian. So who's to say, like, what if that actually did happen, before like maybe that actually like sets Grogu on the path to
Mhm.
Mandalorian. I think that's a really interesting idea that you brought up because we never also never saw like how he escaped the Jedi Temple during Order 66 too. And then yeah, that's also it's like involving more Jedi too. So I don't know. That's a weird one.
Yeah, because it doesn't affect too much, but at the same time too, it's something that's plausible. So that's what I was thinking. It's like one of those things that just happens in the background. Like most Star Wars canon, like the comics and stuff, a lot of stuff doesn't really affect the movies or shows all that much. So it,
Hmm.
it really could work. And who again, like you were saying, who's to say? Maybe it did happen. Maybe you never know. Maybe like some elements of that dripped into like Grogu's lore or something earlier on, just not to the effect of like them actually, or who knows? Maybe they actually were with Grogu. I don't see really why they maybe let him go. If this was canon, I don't know why. Like, what would happen? And then also the
Hmm.
sequel takes place 5 years after the first game. So I know you have a point that there's a little what if scenario that you're gonna bring up next. But the sequel kind of involves a character that is very popular in the game lore. So
Hmm.
would you want to talk about that?
Uh, yeah, I guess. Well, from my first one, well, actually, I was gonna say like yours was really interesting too. I was just thinking about like how Moff Gideon also found Grogu too. So maybe
Oh,
during the purge, maybe he took Grogu from Cal Kestis too. That could be an interesting plot point.
ooh, yeah.
Because we never really found out how he ended up with in Moff Gideon's hands too. Maybe that's how he studied uh the cloning
That
of the
matches
Force or something.
so good with your theory too. Actually, that makes a lot of sense with your theory and what they showed in the trailers for the sequel for Fallen Order. Actually, that matches a lot.
Hmm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's why I love doing these little talks because it's like you never think about the small details
Right.
sometimes in the Star Wars universe until like you talk about it and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, that happened too. But yeah, great point.
Thank you.
Well, for mine, so I was gonna start with well, you guys know I uh, I was a huge fan of Force Unleashed back in the day, and I was kind of mad that they never ran with a sequel. I started doing like a fan fiction a while ago, um, but this was for my first one. I was thinking, what if Disney made Star Killer canon in live action shows and media? So I think it could affect a lot. I feel like Galen, I forgot his name. Well, let's just call him Star Killer, 'cause that's his name anyway in the game. um, or Galen Marek, I think his
Right.
name is. He's such a prominent character, and I feel like he was so underused in in some of the new media. And I think he's a fan favorite. And Sam Witwer, he's so involved with Star Wars too. It's kind of a shame that they kind of let that character go. But I was thinking, like, if he was canon, that could affect so much with like, Vader. Not only just Vader, but like Ahsoka and the Inquisitor is also like, how does like what if somehow like Vader managed to keep like, do you think he would become an Inquisitor, or do you think he would kind of be like, because the Inquisitor I think served more Palpatine than Vader. So do you think like he would make like Galen like a rogue agent like outside of that?
I could see it kind of like that. Now this is kind of cool because I could see him. I could see him kind of as like this born, like this genetically altered person that was like the mix of all the greatness from the Sith or something like that. But it's compelling because that's all he is, and he wants to find life, right? And he's realizing things, and that was not what they expected during the cloning process. They didn't. It's kind of like the clones. They didn't expect for them to have so much personality. And so I think that'll be really cool that he's like this rogue agent a little bit later on, and he kind of tries to go against Vader. Not like Riva, but like it's like I could see that, and like he separates from the Inquisitore, and he's discovering like humanity and stuff, and he's meeting these characters that we've seen from the games, right? But he's
Hmm.
so powerful. So how do you have him a part of canon, but at the same time, do not allow him to affect anything that happened in the sequels or any TV show coming out? So I would propose probably you would have to separate him. It's kind of like the comics. Like a lot of things are like separate. They're like in the far reaches of the galaxy. Like I could imagine like there's a lot of new planets that we haven't seen, and he has a crew like Juno, um,
Hmm.
the droid, which was always a really interesting
Roxy.
looking droid. Yeah,
Hmm.
like I think that'll be really cool, and then plus there's, like, so much Kashyyyk too in one of the games, so I think that'll be really cool to revisit Kashyyyk actually. Like, we haven't really seen Kashyyyk that much in, like, live action, like, in a good
Hmm.
amount. I know episode 3, but, like, actually go because another game that was taking place in Kashyyyk was Jedi Fallen Order, right? So it's like, you could
Hmm.
kind of show more, but this time live action. I think that's really cool. Like, he helps out the Wookiees. Well, that kinda seems like Cal Kestis a little bit too, but I think that'll be a cool overlay, um, in narrative
I
threads.
think it could run parallel to the original game. Like, if they did make him Inquisitor, I feel like he wouldn't be. I feel like he would be more indoctrinated into the Imperial rhetoric, right?
Right.
Um, because he was kind of like even in the games, like when he was like Vader's agent, he kind of had like this freedom a lot. I always noticed like he was very like chill about like he got to choose like his pilot, and he was very like casual. He was a very cool character, but I feel like when you're in the Inquisitorius, like there's a very strict doctrine that you have to follow. I was thinking too, like, what if he actually like killed like Ram Koda like on a mission or something? Like
Mm,
they had to hunt him down. So who would his guiding light be, right? Because Ram Koda was kind of like his mentor
mm.
in the games that like made him step away from the dark. So what if there's a
It
mission?
could be kind of like a political thriller as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, here's the cool thing, because he's so powerful, right? So what if you made a political that's the great thing about Falcon I'm sorry, The Winter Soldier, was that it was like a political thriller, but then things exploded, right, through a fight. And so what if, like, everything was very dialogue centric, dialogue heavy kind of, but, like, if you
Hmm.
were to do a live action thing, and all of a sudden he realized after killing Ram Koda like he did something wrong. There was like this conspiracy that he wasn't
Hmm.
aware of, right? Everyone is kind of indoctrinated, and a lot of people in the galaxy are kind of like, bowing down, and they're kind of brainwashed. Some of them, at least, they trust the
Mhm.
Empire too much. So what if he's realizing things? And then that's where he's going on his journey. And I think that's cool what you're saying, like, because yeah, he was more free in the games, but if he's an Inquisitor, he has to follow a lot of rules. So it's kind of interesting to see this character who's supposed to be like the perfect man, the perfect Sith, realizing
Mhm.
that he wants to break free. And then Q, you play the Queen "I Want to Break Free" song like during the show or something, and it's like this little montage or whatever. So yeah, that would be really
Yeah,
cool.
I would love to see it because I feel like even though he is in the Inquisitorius, I feel like I would love to see this like a series. Like, what if he has like flashbacks about his father?
Mm,
Because when Vader like killed his dad, maybe he has maybe like Vader brainwashed him as a young child. But he still has like that memory of like who his father is, right?
yeah.
And then maybe Vader sends him on a mission to kill like Ahsoka, like after he discovered her in Rebels. And then he tries to kill her, but then Ahsoka being like Anakin's ex-apprentice too, like she tells him like who he really is, and then maybe she helps him to like figure out his past too. Like that could be like a really like there could be like a cool scene where like they meditate, and then he finds out all of a sudden, oh shit, like Vader's actually like really like evil dude, and then it kind of like sets him similar to like how he was like in the games too. Like he starts well, he betrays the Empire basically, and he goes against like Vader.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, that's a cool opposite parallel for Darth Vader, because Darth Vader was a Jedi and then turned to a Sith. So that'll be really cool to see a Sith turn actual like to a Jedi, or at least like a Jedi version of like a male version of Ahsoka, or like maybe his lightsabers are white as well or something, and maybe
mhm,
they partner up, right? Because he has to kind of cure the red from his crystal. So that's what Ahsoka did.
mhm.
I think that'll be really cool. Yeah, that's
It'd
a
be
good
cool
way.
too to see. Yeah, because I know at the end of the second one, Vader did clone him. Like he did have well, at least the alternate ending was like he successfully cloned Galen, to make his own apprentice. So what if this Galen, the first Galen survives, but like Vader had a contingency because he knew he was like kind of like off a bit. So he was like, just as a contingency in case he steps away from the dark, like I have a clone of him just in case. So it's like, what if Starkiller has to fight like a clone of himself, like a dark side clone? I think that could be really interesting.
I think that's cool because Kylo Ren has the Knights of Ren. I think that'll be interesting if Vader had like the Knights of something, and they were all like
Hmm.
this Lord of the Rings, like those evil guys with the crowns or whatever. Like they
The
all were like,
Nazgul,
yeah, they
yeah.
were all like personalized and stuff, but they were all like versions of Starkiller. And through their clothing and through the costuming, it kind of represents versions of what Starkiller doesn't want, or what's in the deeper recesses of his soul. And I think that'll represent a lot. And
Hmm.
that's cool to fight those versions to really show that he's cemented in the good side, right? I think that's really cool.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Do you think he would have like a bigger influence on the galaxy as far as like maybe he meets like Luke down the line or something?
Oh shit! Eventually, you could get Luke to like go to your bar mitzvah or something. That motherfucker's everywhere. But like, I don't
The Book
know.
of Luke, the Book of Starkiller.
Right? The Book of Eli. I mean, you probably can't. Here's the thing: like, comics are explainers. They don't really affect too much from like the Star Wars lore, because everything's like surrounding the gravity of the Skywalker saga. What comes after that is Taika Waititi's, like contribution. But as far as affecting things, I'm not too sure if he would affect too much. I'm not too sure if he should, right? Because Ahsoka shouldn't affect too much, because then she's gonna get in the way of the sequel. Because you
Hmm.
get say what you say, but those are still canon. So it's like, what what will happen there? I don't know. Like Cal Kestis too. Like that's the thing. Cal Kestis and Starkiller are basically like going down the same path. Not story wise, but like interactions wise. And it's like,
Similar, right?
yeah, it's like,
Hmm.
what happens to Cal Kestis later on? Because eventually everyone's probably going to have to die, except Grogu maybe. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It sucks because like when you think about it, like you could have all these cool ideas. That's the greatness of Star Wars. It's not like multi-dimensional. Some certain dimensions, but like not multi-timeline like movies and stuff. It's more of like, back and forth in time. And it's like, but the thing about that is if Ahsoka does something great, we all know eventually she's going to go away or she's going to die, or maybe
Mhm.
she's not gonna die. Maybe she's gonna get rid of something, but she will never be involved again, really. So it's
Nobody's
like,
ever really gone.
right. There you go. My favorite quote.
As Luke once said.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, it's great to think about too, especially because, like, I feel like Darth Vader always has, like, such a deep obsession sometimes with, like, apprentices
Yeah.
too, because it's like, he was obsessed with Luke, he was obsessed he was not like an apprentice, but he was obsessed with finding Obi-Wan too, so it's like, when he has somebody that, like, is as powerful as him, he always goes out of his way, he, like, breaks Imperial, like, doctrine, and he, like, he makes it his mission to find these people, so I feel like having Starkiller canon, maybe he doesn't prioritize Luke so much, like, even though he knows about Luke, because he knows, Starkiller is more trained and he's more powerful.
Mm.
So it could be an interesting thing too,
Yeah, it's a lot
just
of
to think
depth.
about.
It's a lot of depth there with
Yeah.
that idea. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a great character. I hope one day that they actually do find a way to make him canon because it's wasted potential for me, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
And
Sam
Sam
Witwer.
Witwer's
Yeah.
yeah, he's a great voice actor and actor too.
Yeah.
Moving on from that, my second scenario, since we were talking a little bit about Grogu, and since Book of Boba Fett released not too long ago, even though it feels like a while now since
After
when
we
we did those
reviewed.
reviews. Um, so one of our favorite episodes from Book of Boba Fett was actually, I think it was episode 5 or 6,
Yeah.
when Mando finds Grogu on Luke's planet. And Grogu had this choice that Luke Skywalker gave him. He said, "You could either stay with me and train, um, but uh, you'll basically you'll be too attached, right? And then you won't be able to follow the path of the Jedi, or you could go with the Mandalorian, but you'll never be able to return." Which I always thought was stupid anyway. 'Cause it's like he's still young technically, so he
Mm.
has all this potential. But so that episode ended with him going to Mando. So my scenario is, what if he actually stayed with Luke? What are your thoughts on it?
That's interesting because all right, there's two things. One, it will basically change the certain course of season 3 of Mandalorian, and also um certain plot points as well. But it opens
And
up
the
the
sequels.
space. Yeah,
Mhm.
and will Mando feel like, will it affect him so much? It'll affect him a little bit, and I think it's important to show it. I don't think it's going to get in the way of, like, the story that they're trying to tell. Um, but the biggest issue, right, is that now there's finality to that, because either Grogu has to die by the time The Last Jedi, when we see that flashback, and also the rise of Kylo Ren, when we get to know what happens to those Padawans. Either Grogu has to die, or Grogu somehow has to go away, and perhaps Mando saves him. I don't know. Like, maybe there's like a thing like that. But either or, Grogu cannot be involved with the sequels, because then it kind of ruins the point. So that's why there's like a finality for that. So it's like, now that is an alternate timeline. And a TVA has to get involved and fix that up, probably. What do you think would happen, though?
That's true. I feel like it wouldn't affect it too much, but I feel like it would add, I think, to Luke's character, because one thing I didn't like about Luke in The Last Jedi was that he was so stern and he was kind of like dogmatic in the
Right.
Jedi ways. And then there was that scene with, like, he was about to kill Kylo because he feared like he was gonna fall down the dark side.
Hmm.
I don't know. Maybe taking Grogu as his first student changes him, if you think about it.
Yeah, I think most likely, yeah, it's gonna change him. Well, that's the thing, though. It's like, it's hard because, yeah, well, he got
I
him
think
when he
there's a
was
lot of
young.
pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there was pressure on Luke too because Kylo was his blood too, and he didn't want him to become another Anakin. So maybe, Grogu, he's kind of already like, you know, he knows the ways of the Force kind of because he was in the Jedi Temple back then, so he knew a little bit about like the Force and stuff. So maybe it doesn't take as much pressure. It takes pressure off Luke, to train this young Padawan that kind of already is in tune, and he's kind of like a very empathetic character too. Like Grogu is passionate because of the Mandalorian too.
Well, I think this will be a cool opportunity since we're already the version we made a new alternate timeline. I think actually it will be cool if Ben Solo exists, but they're best friends, Grogu and Ben Solo, and they go on adventures perhaps, and it's like this cool dynamic that they both have, right? Because at the end of the day, still Grogu's a baby, but he has more experience than Kylo, so he's
I was gonna say
always
it's like Christopher Robin and Winnie the Pooh for some
right. Yeah.
reason.
That'll be really cool. I would love to see like that with because I always really felt sad that Kylo Ren even existed. I was always hoping that there would be a good Ben Solo. I was hoping he wasn't going to die in Rise of Skywalker. I really wanted to see something be continued. Um, I think that'll be really interesting. I think it'll be really cute too to see Grogu interacting a little bit more with like Mando, and Ben Solo's like there too, and like maybe Grogu kind of takes elements of like Mandalorian culture and stuff. Still,
Mhm.
well, nonetheless, I think Grogu has a bright future ahead of him. I think even if we stayed on a timeline, I don't think Grogu's gone. I think Grogu probably will show up as an older version in Taika Waititi's Star Wars universe. So there's a lot to do with him. As for the alternate timeline, I think that's a really cool Anakin Obi-Wan situation where it's like Ben Solo and Grogu, and I think that's really cool because Ben
Yeah.
Solo has a lot
Well, let
of
me ask
Anakin
you.
maybe.
Yeah, let me ask you, do you think, Grogu has the potential to be the next Yoda?
Well, I I like to think of Yoda as like I don't like to think of a certain species better than other species. I like to think that perhaps they're gifted with something that could make them a little bit like have a little bit more of an advantage. But I like to think Yoda has a lot of experience and a lot of trouble. From the comics in the High Republic, he was a commander there, and he'd been through a lot of problems, right? And I like to think of the experiences kind of uh every wrinkle on Yoda's face really entails like this journey that he's been through. And
Mhm.
I think hopefully if he goes through a path that Disney, if they're trying to alternate timeline, if they're willing to show that path and to show a lot of
Mhm.
violence, a lot of tragedy, and a lot of happiness, I think there's time for wisdom. Because look at the Sandman, right? The Sandman, there was a guy who lived for so long and he kept on changing his perspectives on things. I think if you're
Mhm.
given that much time, you have plenty of time to make mistakes, right? Without it affecting your
Right.
life forever. So yeah, I think probably the next Yoda, but I think of a more fun, version of Yoda, maybe a
Mhm.
more woke and hip Yoda, like tattoos
Right.
and a mustache.
Well, it's interesting too because I feel like Grogu has so much potential to be, like, a powerful but wise Jedi,
Yeah.
and I feel like in my at least my opinion, I feel like this scenario could fall down the path to, uh, Force Awakens, like, in the same fashion, and in an interesting way because I feel like Kylo has so much of Anakin in him too. What if Luke decided to make, like, Grogu, like, the head of the council or something, and then, like,
Ooh.
he kept overlooking Kylo because, like, Kylo was kinda, like, arrogant, kinda like Anakin, and then, like, in a similar fashion, he doesn't let, Kylo join the council, and then Kylo kind of, like, he's like, it's outrageous, it's unfair."
That is so
And that
funny.
kinda yeah, sets him down this path, so, like, he's kinda, like, jealous of, like, Grogu and, like, the Jedi or
You
something.
want me to tell you why this discussion is good, right? Not to toot our own horn, but I want to tell you why this conversation is really great and why I think it's really accurate. Because The Force Awakens basically is a rehash of A New Hope, right? So if you made The Force Awakens now with that in set, then it'll basically be a rehash of kind of like Revenge of the Sith or something, or at least a lot of elements. So it's kind of cool how it's still like a rehash. So it kind of matches like if we were in a different reality, it will be kind of like the same
Mhm.
notions happening. So that's really interesting.
As George Lucas always says, it's poetry, it
Dude, and if no,
rhymes.
it is because if you look at the titles, apparently, like the titles say something about like the characters and stuff. Um, yeah, man. Yeah, like apparently they're interchangeable or something like that. Like
Mhm,
Phantom Menace can just go at the Rise of Skywalker, and Rise of Skywalker kind of go like replace that too. So it's really interesting.
mhm.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a good theory. because it's poetry. It rhymes, like you said.
Yeah,
Double-edged
that's the thing.
sword.
It's like Star Wars, like you said, it's so interchangeable. It's
Yeah.
like even if you lose one character, like I feel like Hydra, like
For
another will take its
yeah,
place.
I was gonna say that.
like because Kylo was so much meant to be like Anakin. I don't think he per se was, because he kind of has like, he has elements of Luke, he has elements of Han Solo and Anakin too. But I think for the most part, when they made his character, they kind of modeled it after Kylo. Because I mean after Anakin, because I
Mm.
feel like he felt like so underappreciated, or but then again, it's like I sometimes I hated his character too in the sequels, because it's like he came from like a privileged background if you think about it, because he had, Luke as his uncle, and like he was of Skywalker blood. His mother and father were like famous like heroes of the rebellion too. So I never understood like why he would just want to throw that away just for like some fucking pickled Palpatine. I don't know, but it's interesting to think about that in that regard. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, great theories, but for my well, maybe I have two more, but for this one, talking about the sequels anyway, because you and I have talked about the sequels a lot. We have, I would say, mainly negative criticisms. There's
Mhm.
certain elements of the sequels I do enjoy. Um, and we talked about John Boyega a bit, because he has like such a toxic relationship with Disney. And I think a lot of fans were kind of like misled too when they first introduced his character, because they kind of made it seem like he was going to be like the next Jedi, or like this, force sensitive person. So my what if scenario for this one is, what if Finn was actually the Jedi instead of Rey?
Yeah. So I think it's the same path that Ray would have taken. Well, except the love for Ben. So unless they wanted to do that, I don't know. But except that part, like Rise of Skywalker will be a little bit different. But and I think for the most part, he's basically going to be, if Ray was still involved, you know, it's actually really compelling too. It's really interesting. It's really cool. Because you could rise up above the norms. But that's the same thing too. It's like Ray, she rose up too from like nothing. You're nothing. Your parents sold you for drinking money. It's like that. It was alluded he's force sensitive. I think he would still go on the same path that Ray did, right? Because she's not really related to anybody, except the father was apparently like a clone from like Palpatine or something like that, if I remember correctly. Um, but little things would change, right? But for the most part, it'll be the same path. And
Hmm.
I don't know. I think if they did that, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it'll be cool because it's a black character that they want to show that is this new Jedi leading the sequel trilogy. So that's cool. But for the most part, it's nothing really changes. Yeah, nothing really changes. I don't
I
know.
mean, yeah, I was so mad when they alluded to it at the end that he was force sensitive, because it was such a wasted potential, because they weren't sure if they were gonna make it. I mean, they're in talks right now. Maybe there's gonna be a sequel. Maybe Taika's handling it. But I feel like for the most part, I feel like Finn's character was such a shot in the dark. Like
Mhm.
I kind of wanted more from his character other than just being like this wasted love interest for Ray that doesn't even get get her at the
Mhm.
end.
Mhm.
But I mean, he's a turncoat stormtrooper in Force Awakens, and I did like that concept. I did like the idea of like, there are people that, people change, right? You don't have to always follow. And if you think about it too, because he was an orphan, right?
Right.
And it was kind of like similar to how like the Jedi kind of like took orphans too, like at a very young age, and kind of like indoctrinated them too. I don't think, yeah, I agree. I don't think it'll change too much, but I think it'd just be interesting to see. I don't know. It's like, because like maybe he still meets Ray, but because Ray, I mean, she's a Palpatine technically, but what if like she didn't get the Force sensitivity, right? Because I feel like the Force, even though like, even if you're born into like a Force sensitive family, I feel like you have to have like a high midichlorian count. So what if she had like a low count, and then Finn just like had a high one for some reason. Do
It's
you
so
think that
funny to think about that. Yeah.
yeah, do you think like he would actually like well, finding out that he is force sensitive, do you think that would actually make him more corrupt in a way? Like maybe he wants to like rise up in the first orders a bit, or do you think he's still like a turncoat?
No, well, the thing is, it's what affects you for being a Sith or a Jedi is the practice, the experience you have in your life, and that kind of like the story that you're leading, right, for yourself, and that kind of dictates like the path you're going to go. So that's why the Jedi's in place to, and then they take kids when they're young, teach them, right? Um, so for the most part, no. I think that if anything, if he wasn't to go on that journey of the Force Awakens, and well, he has to get the lightsaber, but like if he took another path and it kind of showed it, right? It was a different type of movie. I think he'll be more of like this Jedi that's like stuck in the middle, like this type of anti-hero that there isn't really that much good, but he still has hope. Now if we were to follow the events of The Force Awakens, I think he'll still be the same. I think he'll still be a Jedi. Um, I think so.
I think it I think it could be interesting, like, because I think with Ray, because you have to think about like character motivations too. Like her whole thing was like she was trying to discover herself because she didn't know who her parents were.
Mhm.
So maybe for Finn, because his whole thing was like he was kidnapped as a young child into the First Order, and he kind of dealt with the trauma of that. Wouldn't it be interesting? Like maybe he uses, like you said, he's like kind of like this anti-hero, but instead of turning into a Jedi, maybe not right away he turns into Jedi, but like he tries to like save like kidnapped kids from the First Order. Like he uses his powers to like save these like small communities because he felt bad about what he did when he shot up when they shot that village in the first half of the movie. So wouldn't it be interesting, like, he uses his force powers to, like, save these, like, communities that are, like especially because the New Republic isn't really doing anything about the First Order at this time. They're still kind of like this, like, ghost story in, like, the what are the Inner Rim. So he could be, like, this cool, like, superhero, I guess. Like, he's not really a Jedi, but he uses his powers for good or something. I don't know, it could be interesting.
Yeah, and I think that that gives opportunity. I think that could still give opportunity to. He'd probably build his own like faction or something through time because there's this story of somebody saving these kids. So I could see other characters making cameos. I could still see maybe Lando somehow getting involved, or someone like that, like some scroungy type of character. You know, you need all the misfits to come together, um, and that'll be really interesting to see.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's all I have for that, but, my final what if, we talked a little bit before recording, because there's so much depth to it. I think it really changes a lot of the history of Star Wars when you talk about this. So, my final scenario, which is actually, I guess, the most pivotal thing about Star Wars was when Luke did the trench run on the Death Star, and he blew the Death Star up, and that's how he became like the hero of the rebellion, right? So, what if Luke actually couldn't connect to the Force in that moment, and he missed, and he didn't blow up the Death Star? So obviously, Yavin 4 would be destroyed because he missed, and then Leia was on Yavin 4, so she'd probably die, right? So where do you think the events will take place, or how do you think it would turn out?
I think I don't think that he would be very renowned. I think he'll be very disgraced. I think that he probably will lead the same life that Obi-Wan did in the Obi-Wan series because he had nothing else to do. He did have Obi-Wan, but at the same time it's like he failed and it was such an impact to him. I don't think he's going to lead anything cuz he's not really credible. I think he'll probably stick around. Maybe who knows? Maybe he'll stick around because the fault isn't completely his because everyone else is like fucking up too. So I think he'll stick around, but I just don't think it'll be a path of like that he's taken in the main series. I think it's going to be a little bit more grungier, a little bit more like it's gonna be a little bit darker the path he's going to take
Mhm.
because everything is a lot more sad now. And who's going to lead the rebellion? A lot of characters have died on Yavin, so I don't think he's gonna be like the natural born leader because that's just not him. That's the cool thing about his path. And the main comics at least back then took place after A New Hope, right? And he's never like really led anything. He was just like going around on adventures, and it was really cool to see him acquiring stuff. After
Hmm.
Empire, right? Then the comics started again. Now he's kind of leading a little bit more, but now it's more of self discovery. So I don't think he's going to lead that much. I think it's gonna be a lot more self-discovery, but in a darker way, right? Because it's so
Hmm.
heavy, the burden that he holds that he failed, right? And he's gonna blame himself. And he's gonna kind of be a lot like Obi-Wan, and I think that's
I could
why.
see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it with like you said, he's so disgraced and he's so burdened with guilt because even though he wasn't the only one that failed, he was the one that he was the last resort, right? He was the last one to do the run before they blew up Yavin, right? So there's so much pressure on him. There's so much weight of guilt. So I feel like he'd probably go into exile, but it's also interesting to think about because even though Leia is dead, Han Solo survived, right? Because he at the last minute, he did like offer Luke to like go with him too. He was like, "You want to join me, kid?" Maybe they they do like Kessel runs or some shit. They're like smoking a joint in the Millennium Falcon or something. I don't know, but it could be interesting. Like maybe he's the only one to turn to, right? Because Luke lost Obi-Wan, he lost Leia, and he doesn't really feel like he fits in the rebellion now because everyone pretty much hates him because there's not much left of the rebellion if you think about it because they lost Yavin. So it's like they're trying to like reorganize. So maybe Han Solo is like the only one he turns to, because they're kind of like outcasts too, right? They're misfits in their own right. So they have like cool adventures or something, and then maybe down the line like Luke like has like a self discovery. Maybe Obi-Wan does come back as a Force ghost and say, "Hey, it's okay. You know what? We all go through failures. I even had went through my failures with Anakin." So it's like um there's still another Jedi that I want you to meet, Yoda, right? And then he still goes through like the same motions as he did in Empire, and then maybe he builds that confidence back up. I don't know.
Well, what if Han Solo was the one to actually, since Luke failed, Han Solo like went back and he was the one to blow up the Death Star? But the Death Star blew up
That's
Yavin though,
interesting.
that makes it darker. So the Death Star already blew up Yavin, but then Han Solo came and he actually blew up the
At
Death
the
Star.
last minute.
So then maybe Han
Mm,
Solo, he figured out like, "You know what? Maybe this is actually I tried to be a part of the Empire, right? I tried to do something for the greater good or try to be slick and get this, but I just realized that I actually have a lot of opportunity here and I have to help these people." So what if he actually leads the rebellion this time and Luke is like his
mhm,
second in command or probably yeah, second in command. And it's like maybe Luke still goes on the path because there's so many resources available now because they're still like gathering from different planets and stuff. So maybe he's still
mhm.
it wouldn't be the same, but for the most part it kind of would be. And I think it'll be really interesting. It's a different type of journey. A couple of different steps, a little bit off to the left, right? Than it was supposed to be in the right. But he still gets
Mhm.
back into the destination eventually. I could see it. I could see it happening. Yeah, fuck yeah, I could see that happening.
That's really interesting actually when you mentioned Han Solo. Yeah, because like I feel like even Han Solo would have some guilt too because even though he blew up the Death Star and he's praised as a hero, he missed the opportunity. Like he kind of like feels bad that like he didn't do it sooner because now Leia's dead, right? And most of the alliance is dead. So there's still kind of like a shared guilt between. It's kind of like if you think of like Thor in Endgame,
Ooh, and
like
he didn't
like they,
shoot first either. Remember, like, that whole thing? Yeah, that I mean, that could
right.
tie in, like, that literally can tie in, like, he usually like, there's that thing and, like, he's supposed to shoot first or something, but Luke
Mm-hmm.
took charge and he failed, so this time, like, maybe Han
Mm.
Solo's more of an aggressive character now, like, he's more and it kinda blurs the line of, like, what's right and what isn't,
Mm-hmm.
so because he has this ideology of thinking, "Well, shit, now we have to always be the attacker," it's kinda like Saw Gerrera, maybe perhaps he turns
Mm-hmm.
into that character. There's plenty of spin-offs you could do. You could do like Apocalypse
Yeah.
Now with Luke trying to like calm Han Solo, or you could just do a thing where like
Mm-hmm.
Luke says, "You know what, fuck this, I'm out of here. There's nothing really good." So he needs to figure out a new path of enlightenment. And so he goes to Beverly Hills and tries yoga or something, or he goes to see Yoda somehow, right? I think that would be really
Mm-hmm.
cool.
That could be interesting too, because like they'd actually, I feel like they'd be a lot closer because they were kind of like both. Well, Luke didn't know at the time that Leia was his sister because I in the comics and the lore they were kind of like both vying for like Leia's affection too. So maybe they grow closer as like brothers or something, and that makes it harder when Han Solo actually gets captured by Darth Vader and put into the carbonite. So maybe that's more impactful for Luke. Maybe
Ooh.
that makes Luke actually more like vengeful towards Vader because that's his only friend, right?
Although who's
And it
gonna
kind of
lead
like
the rebellion?
that's true, yeah.
Maybe Luke has to
That's true
take the
because yeah,
reins.
once you take out Leia from the equation, I mean, I guess Han could step up, but I feel like even though he's kind of like a leader, he doesn't have like the qualities that Leia had because she's kind of like this diplomat too, right? She
Mm.
had all the traits that Padme had that made her like such a great leader. So I don't know, because like most of the if Yavin died, most of the rebellion would be pretty much like wiped out, right?
Well,
So
not
it's like, yeah,
really
it's a good
though.
question.
Not because Han does know a lot of that's why I said Han could be in commander because not only is he going to be like Saw Gerrera because the smugglers always play dirty, but he also knows a lot of people. So it would be really interesting to see like he gets a lot of pirates, like Somali pirates or something involved. he gets he's like no very Irish.
Right.
He's like he gets a lot of people like somehow involved, but they're all like shady characters, and that's
Mm.
where Luke is like seeing like, well, shit, this we took a big hit, and now this Rebel Alliance is really like treading on thin ice because all these people they're just with us really either for money or something like that, right? And Han already is like kind of becoming a little bit weird because he didn't shoot first or something. So that's why I think it'll force Luke even more to find different answers how to beat this, empire. And if Han goes, well, then now it's like, well, you better rush to find a way how to fix all of this, right? And I think that's a
Mhm.
really cool, compelling like way to make a sequel. Um, and the pacing will be structured really quickly. I would assume because everything is coming to shit,
Mhm.
So
That's
yeah,
really that's a great scenario
yeah,
in my opinion. Oh, there's actually one more thing I want to talk about.
yeah.
One more scenario. We kind of talked about before recording. What if because you and I love Revenge of the Sith. There's so many great moments. What if and this is a very pivotal moment too in the saga when Anakin and Obi-Wan are facing Count Dooku and the Invisible Hand.
Mhm.
So my scenario is what if actually they both died? So
Oh boy.
like Count Dooku actually for some stupid reason like he just like maybe Anakin gets too cocky and then like maybe Count Dooku brings in General Grievous and then he kills Anakin and then they both overpower Obi-Wan and then they're both dead. I think this could have a big effect on the galaxy, but I want you to share your thoughts that you share with me.
100%. That's it. That's final. Everything would change. I think everything would change completely. A lot of stuff would happen in the comics and in spin-off series still. So anything that involves Darth Vader though, cuz Darth Vader is that character where he's important but like to a group of people sometimes. Like that's how they kind of display it, right? The one really in charge, the most people you see is actually the soldiers and Palpatine here and there and the forces at play. But it isn't Darth Vader like he's single-handedly doing everything. He's everywhere all at once, right? He's not Michelle Yeoh. So I think that it affects it, but it affects the closed circle a little bit more. So but I think a lot of events in like Star Wars Rebels, I think will kind of play the same. Now we were talking about a lot about Padme. I think that's what a lot of people are thinking about. It's like, what would happen with Padme, right? So you were saying something about the kids being raised. So tell us a little bit more about that. What do you think will happen with the kids?
Yeah, so I guess in this alternate timeline, even though Anakin's dead, Padme still survives. Because she doesn't die from sadness. Or maybe she doesn't. Maybe who knows? Maybe she dies from because she's depressed about losing Anakin.
Mm.
But let's say for this first example, she survives, right? So she makes it through Order 66. The radical change of the Empire, and she gives birth to Luke and Leia, right? So maybe having a mother now and not having been split up, Luke and Leia, maybe they grow stronger, as siblings. Maybe maybe well, because Padme doesn't really have any like force training, so maybe she finds like maybe Yoda still goes into exile. Let's say because he has to, because he's the only one that can face Palpatine. Um, so he goes back to the exile, and then maybe Padme sends Luke and Leia to be trained by him. But also, I feel like Padme would be so she'd want to stay close to her kids too. If you think about it, I don't think she'd be so willing to let them go. But what do you think? What do you think would happen?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple of things here. So, number one, if Count Dooku killed Anakin, Count Dooku would be in trouble because Palpatine was grooming Anakin, from a lot of comics we've seen. So he wasn't supposed to do that. So if he did do that, either there'll be repercussions, and Count Dooku probably would either lose his life or probably be promoted to something else. I don't know.
I was just doing my job.
Yeah. Well, but at the same time too, Padme has her people, her lookalikes, and so in the comics, in the Darth Vader comics, they actually formed their guerrilla group, and they. I have a feeling that Padme, she's the type of character that doesn't want to like live that type of life where like she's ignoring all of this, and especially to avenge Anakin, she'd probably, and she was so involved in the Clone Wars too. I think she would join that guerrilla group. I think she'll probably lead it. I think she'll lead it, and I think that Luke and Leia won't it
Hmm.
discover the Force too much unless somehow if like Obi-Wan doesn't die like in that encounter, and somehow Obi-Wan's like disgraced and goes to exile too, but then he comes back and tries to help Luke and Leia to discover the Force. And
Well,
also what
Obi-Wan would
happens.
be dead too in this scenario.
Okay, so if Obi-Wan's dead, you still have Ahsoka. So like maybe Ahsoka would train them or something, So it's a very it matches today's media where like everything is very feminine centric, everything is like very strong women. Like I could see Ahsoka like helping Leia and Padme. It's very, no father around. They're leading
Hmm.
things. So it matches today's scenario because we also have to think about that too. How can we get this to trend? Unfortunately, I have to think about that. But that matches. I could see that happening. I think it's really badass too, especially having Natalie Portman like years later for like a sequel to this.
Hmm.
Um, Luke and Leia. Hopefully, they're not like the Martinez twins or whatever. I don't know. Hopefully, they don't end up like that or something. Um,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
that's a great that's a great scenario. I see it like maybe Padme, because she's still kind of like a loyalist to Palpatine because they're from Naboo, so maybe she plays on that. Like she knows this is wrong. She knows the Empire is basically like a dictatorship, right? So, and there was a deleted scene back in the day of Revenge of the Sith where like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma and Padme were like talking about like what Palpatine is doing. So it's kind of like planting the seeds of the rebellion. So I would see it like maybe Padme, and she knows that her kids are force sensitive, right? And she doesn't want maybe Yoda tells her that Palpatine is actually a Sith Lord, right? Not Obi-Wan. And then she knows that, this is having them so close to Palpatine could be a threat. So maybe she does actually like send them away. Maybe she knows Ahsoka's alive. She finds out Ahsoka's alive. She actually leaves her kids with her to be trained, because at least they're out of like Palpatine's reach. And then from the inside, she starts working with Bail Organa, and they start formulating the rebellion.
I could actually see her sending the kids to Bail Organa since it's a safe place, probably, and Ahsoka trains the kids in Alderaan. I could kind of see that. And the quest of like a badass woman going to seek answers would be Natalie Portman going to seek answers.
Hmm.
I could see, and at the same time too. Yeah, no, because like I could think maybe she's gonna try to like lie to Palpatine and try to get in closer. Like she changes and she tries to like kind of like be
She's
like
like an
this.
informant or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is, Palpatine kind of knows about Anakin and the relationship, and it's like maybe Count Dooku doesn't get in trouble. Maybe he's like, maybe he gets punished or something, or maybe he does die, but like, oh, I have new opportunities here. I have two now. I could have two apprentices that I could have since they were a baby, younger than Anakin was, right? So now I could do
Mm-hmm.
something with that. And in the bad scenario, if he does capture them, then they would probably be the first of the Inquisitors or something like that to train him,
Mm-hmm.
which will be really sad. But for the most part, that's why I kept on going to the gorilla thing, because if you're a gorilla, you're hiding like mostly in the wilderness and stuff like that. So I could kind of see her hiding somewhere like that.
Can you imagine Leia like being raised by Padme? She'd be so much more badass if you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. I don't know, because it's Saul Guerrero plays so much, and like anytime you have somebody who like is like in the wilderness or hiding somewhere, you always think of Saul Guerrero. I could still see her becoming hardened from the experience, and it affects her kids a lot. And eventually they learn like, well, my mom is protecting me so much, and we have to hide so much. Well, what are we gonna do? We're gonna stop hiding, and we're actually gonna like try to discover life on our own.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, they discover a lot of things are pretty bad. A lot of people are brainwashed by the Empire, and we have this
Mm-hmm.
potential that we need to unlock. Well, how do we unlock it? Well, we know a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it could really work. It's crazy how like if Anakin, because it's weird, because again, Anakin, if he dies, well, it affects certain people, but like a lot of things will, because I think still the Mandalorian will still come into play. I think it could still work. Now with the Jedi, the Jedi Temple thing will be different, but I think it could still work. Because Anakin didn't single-handedly kill every single Jedi. It was a lot of clones, still stormtroopers. Um, he
Well, do you
did.
think? Do you
Yeah,
think? Do you think the Empire would be more vulnerable because they don't have a Vader?
no.
Because Vader was kind of like their. If you think about it in the comics and media, Vader was kind of like their secret weapon, right? Like if because think about it, like the stormtroopers, what are they gonna do, right? I mean, you could say like Palpatine could still start the Inquisitorius, and maybe that's how he starts weeding out potential candidates for an apprentice because he lost Anakin. But I always felt like Anakin. I mean, you might disagree, like because I've always said like Anakin, like maybe he affected a lot of like Order 66, but you say it wouldn't really matter much. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like he was always kind of like their secret weapon, and especially because they're trying to uh build the Death Star, right? So they're trying to make sure that you know the galaxy is secure while they're building this very secret project too. But what are your thoughts on it?
The Empire's secret weapon is the clones and money. That's really about it. Anakin, he's supposed to be the chosen one. Well, he was just a part of fate, where like he defeats Palpatine. But Anakin, he's a great character, and the reason being is because he doesn't have the burden of this fate that like maybe you're talking about. He has this he's more free a little bit, right? Kind of like Star Killer, especially in the comics. Um, because who killed most of the clones? Well, I mean, who killed most of the Jedi? It was clones. Who killed a lot of Jedi later on? The Inquisitors. Do you still need Inquisitors? Well, no. Thousands and thousands of Jedi died at the hands of clones, and they were experienced too. And a lot of them had to go into exile anyway, right? So that was the overwhelming force. How can you do that? Well, because you played your hand really well and you have a lot of money and you have a lot of power from that. That's what's power is. It isn't like this magical force, right? Because you can't control every aspect of the galaxy. It's the military force that you have, the banner that you're wielding, right, into battle, and people are afraid of that. They're not afraid because you have a red lightsaber. Later on, they probably are, right? But there's only one person. If you surround Riva and her Inquisitor gang with a lot of troops, and they're like backed in the corner, you kill them all.
Well, there's
So
also a comic too where Vader like wiped out like a whole battalion of like rebels too.
yeah, he could wipe out.
So
He could wipe out as many as he want, but he didn't kill every Jedi. That's the thing. Like if he's gone, he's gone. I mean, and in that again, the Skywalker saga. The whole point of the Skywalker saga, it's in the name, the Skywalker saga. The events happen, but that's what's cool about What If is because these events will change from the Skywalker saga and just be this kind of Game of Thrones lore, this Tolkien lore or something
Mhm.
like that, where like it's this whole world right? That's why a lot of other canon is really cool because it doesn't really take place with the Skywalker saga. We're not so centralized on that. That's why What If is cool. But I don't think Darth Vader has a huge ass hand to play because in the comics they're like, yeah, good, fuck you, all right, and he's gonna go somewhere and he's gonna like go on his own quest, right? And most of the time it's like this sneaky self-discovery type of quest, or like he's putting certain things into play that doesn't really show up in the comics, in the films anyway. And if
But
you
you
look,
don't think
yeah,
he made it easier for the Empire to take over?
no, no, he absolutely not. No, the clones did.
Hmm.
Absolutely, the clones
That's
did.
interesting.
He's more of like, when I think of Anakin, I put myself in an outside perspective as if I'm an alien and I never heard of Star Wars, and I look at this character, and I think he represents so much of a narratological aspect, not more of like this practical aspect. I think it's symbolic. It shows something, right? That he did this. I think
Hmm.
really the chosen one here, a lot of people are like kind of chosen ones, but I think the most important person is actually Luke. Um, I think Anakin was this person. He's like a tool, right, to shape things, and that's the journey he kind of like embarks. And it's really sad because he thought he was this person, right? He's not going to be a Jedi master. He failed at that. His mother died. Everyone died. He's been burned alive. So how do you
Hmm.
rediscover life, right? If you were this chosen one, like if Luke was this type of chosen one, I don't think he would embark the same path. I'm sorry. If Luke was like this Anakin character, I don't think he'll embark the same path Anakin did. I don't think he'll be burned alive. I don't think this and that will happen. Luke kind of got it right because he was humbled. Anakin failed because he started too young, right? So he didn't experience too much, and that's why later on he experienced a lot in the comics. But I don't think he's a pivotal role whatsoever because there wouldn't be that many main characters in Star Wars if he was such a pivotal role because he'll kill all of them.
Hmm.
Um,
I actually disagree with Luke Disembark. I feel like he could go through a similar journey as Anakin, maybe not as detrimental, but just like imagine like what if he becomes the next Anakin, right? Because Palpatine lost Vader, right? He's looking for a new apprentice. So who is the next best candidate, right? The offspring of Anakin, right? Maybe maybe like you said, like Leia still goes to Alderaan with Bail, so Palpatine doesn't realize that she's force sensitive, so he goes to Luke, right? Maybe Ahsoka has trouble training Anakin, right? She kind of goes through like this Obi-Wan phase where like she's kind of like he was kind of like thrown onto her, right? So she feels like he's her responsibility, not just because he's the last Jedi technically, but because he's Anakin's son, right? Maybe there's so much pressure on her that she can't handle it, and then maybe Palpatine finds out what Padme's doing, and then he kills her, and then it's kind of like the same thing as Anakin. Like Luke loses his own mother, right? And then it kind of sets him down this path, and maybe Leia becomes the next Luke, right? And then she kind of has to redeem her brother in a similar fashion.
Yeah,
I think
that
that,
could absolutely happen too. That could absolutely
yeah,
happen. That
yeah. I
that
always like to see like
100.
parallels. Yeah.
Yeah, that absolutely can happen. I mean, I always consider Luke as kind of like a Superman character. Grew up from like humble beginnings, and that's what really helped him. Because he gained a responsibility and a recognition for a lot of situations that he's in. And that's why he's kind of really relatable. And it's cool to see this whiny kid become this master. Um,
Hmm.
and so if he's disrespected that way and the environment's really toxic, of course. Now I don't know if he'll be the apprentice of Palpatine. I would imagine he'll kind of be like Starkiller, where he's gonna like try to kill. It's gonna kind of be like God of War or something like that. I could see that happening, and maybe he takes over. Not like, oh, I'm gonna rule the Empire, bitch. Not like that, but I could kind of see him as like a Killmonger type of character. Um,
I
yeah,
could see like he tries to kill Palpatine, but Palpatine being like the persuasive like snake that he is, like finds a way to make, Luke feel like he's undervalued. Like he has so much more potential and he could learn more from Palpatine than Ahsoka, right?
unless Luke plays it like a all the politics, they're all like snakes, and really, unless he plays it like that, like he has some of his mother in him, but he's like, he learned a little bit of politics through his time, and he's kind of
Hmm.
trying to backstab Palpatine a little bit later on, and he does, and he takes over. That's really bad of him. Then he's gonna be a really big like problem. So that's really interesting. That's cool to see Leia having to rise up and and lead. And I think that
Hmm.
could probably lead to Kylo Ren or Ben Solo being born somehow, like in the future still. Except
Hmm.
again, she's a Jedi, so I don't know. That's sad too. It's like you're going against your own mother. If like he still tries to follow the same path as like his uncle, perhaps, or something
Hmm.
like that. Um, so yeah, that's a toxic timeline. That's like a bad girls club timeline. That's toxic.
That's the 2 pages glued together
Yeah,
timeline.
exactly.
But yeah, I mean that's why like I love having these discussions. There's so much lore and so much depth to the many characters and plot points of Star Wars. It expands every day.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many stories you could tell. Even with you wouldn't even need new characters. You could just retell the old story with just change some pieces around, and maybe it still tells the same story like in this. Maybe it tells like a different story, right? So yeah, this was a great discussion. I can't wait to for all the new projects that D23 announced. But yeah, Mandalorian's coming up. I know Ahsoka's coming up as well. I don't know what's going on with Lando. I mean, hopefully, we get something on that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you expect we'll see for the future of Star Wars?
Yeah, I think Lando is basically the Star Wars version of Armor Wars. So we'll see. I know we're gonna have Ahsoka pretty soon. I don't doubt that. Yeah, I don't. I think Ahsoka. I think hopefully they bring more of like Rebels, like canon, or like maybe make a Sabine show or something like that. I'd like to see that, to be honest.
Hmm.
Mando, of course, season 3, but Pedro Pascal is too busy being paid by
Last
HBO,
of Us.
right? Six
Yeah.
hundred thousand an episode for.
That's insane, dude. I don't know what the fuck they're doing for that show because I
I
saw
don't
what they
know.
did for Lord of the Rings and I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah, man. That's Unreal Engine 5, how much he's getting paid, and I don't know what
Right.
they're gonna do. I guess it costs so much money to uh set decorate like all this moss and stuff on buildings. Probably. I don't know.
Moss.
Yeah, right.
$1 billion moss.
Well, man, I mean, if you think about it, it's like imagine doing a whole city. It's like but then I Am Legend looked pretty good the way how they did it at the time too, I think. So it's like still that wasn't fucking that expensive to do that. So I don't know. That's really yeah, but yeah, what do you think else is coming out for like Star Wars in the meantime?
Well, I know they announced the smaller projects, what I like to call the food stamps. Well, I know we have Star Wars Visions, and I was really
Yeah.
hype about that when it came out, so I can't wait to see what they do for I guess volume 2 of that because those were really like fun episodes. I wish they did more like anthology stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know we're trying to make a series on our podcast where we talk more about Star Wars stuff. So hopefully, if you guys enjoyed this video, you'll listen to future stuff that we do for because we love Star Wars. Star Wars is an amazing franchise. I know sometimes the fandom seems a little toxic,
Hmm.
and then sometimes some of the projects don't work out. But I mean, overall, I would say it's if you want to get into like lore and really character building, I would say like Star Wars is an amazing place to start. But as for the future, I mean, I don't know how many seasons they could keep going with Mandalorian. I feel like after season 3, it might dwindle down a bit. I mean, depending on like what the show does, because it's a great show, but I feel like sometimes after like a third season, you kind of like hit your peak. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they'll keep pushing out episodes for that because it's kind of like it's like a weird story. It's not like a set story like Anakin's story, but like you could keep making more episodes, but I feel like after a while it becomes too formulaic.
All right.
Um, but yeah, I know we have Lando. I don't know what they're doing with fucking Rangers of the Republic. More like it's like
It got
canceled
canceled.
Republic
Yeah.
now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because Gina
so
Carano, yeah.
yeah, but I mean, I mean they could still do stuff with that. I don't know why they didn't just like recast or something.
I wasn't too interested, to be honest. I really wasn't. When I heard that, I wasn't. I liked Gina Carano's character, but I wasn't like super interested in seeing it continue. I rather see her as cameos rather than like an actual show. I don't know. I wasn't really
Hmm.
interested in that. You know.
Yeah, I don't know what else you could do with that. Honestly, I mean,
Ac-
maybe we see like the formation of the New Republic. I don't know,
but they were
but then
around
it's like
anyway. In Mando, they were around. They just started though.
I mean, they could do, like, flashbacks and, like, see, like, what happened after Endor.
It was like the Lord of the Rings or something like that, like all these
Right.
swordsmen there. The
Well, isn't there
Fellowship.
supposed to be like isn't there supposed to be like an X-Wing squadron show or some shit?
Oh, I think it takes place. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh gosh, what's the game that came out that I played? It wasn't that good, to be honest. It was a game that also was based on the comic series and a novel series. It was like I have a pile of games here, guys. I can't. Oh, it's just called
Is it like
Squadrons.
Rogue
It's
Squadron? Oh, just Squadron. Yeah.
it's like some squadron. But yeah, Star Wars Squadron. That team is there, and it talks a lot about it.
I could see like a Top Gun kind of thing where like they're like these cool
That's what
pilots.
they're doing, yeah. But it takes place
Yeah.
from the comics, though. It's like mixed with the comics lore, which is pretty cool. I'm
Hmm.
glad that they're starting to do that. I think it's the comics are worthy of doing that. We have acolytes as well. I'm excited
Oh
for
yeah, that's
that.
right.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. I'm a little bit wary on it too. I'm like, okay.
Hmm.
I don't know why they just don't do stuff. If you want to involve like a lot of Sith, why not just do stuff like way back when, like before High Republic? 'Cause High
At their
Republic,
height.
yeah,
Yeah.
because High Republic is like, okay, but there's no Sith. I thought there was gonna be like a lot of Sith. No, it's just pirates. So it's like, why don't you go back, back, back?
Somali
Somali
pirates. Just
pirates. That's what it is. It's Captain Phillips. It's
right.
like, why do that? Why not? I want to see Yoda when he's young too. I want to see, why not just keep going all the
Hmm.
way back? But uh, we have uh apparently there was like a leak from the Comic-Con like calendar or whatever. They showed like a lot of Disney stuff, and there's pretty much a lot of Star Wars content coming out all the way up to 2026. And I actually marked it on our business calendar actually, so if you want to look later. But yeah, I think Taika is going to do something that continues the sequel trilogy, but it's going to be like a brand new thing, and I don't think it's going to be anything involving Skywalker, of course, but I think it's going to
Star Wars Love and Thunder.
Love and Thunder. Well, I don't know. Maybe Finn is gonna come back somehow. I don't know. I mean, here's to
Well, Ryan
hoping.
Johnson also has a trilogy in development. I don't know what
Correct.
he's
Yeah.
gonna do with that. So,
I wonder what that
I mean,
is. I don't know what that's going to be though. That's
I have
weird.
no idea. Whenever I hear still in development, that means that just to me it feels like there's not a script ready.
Right. It's just a couple of flashcards of like some comic characters there. Like, yeah, let's do
Somebody's
this.
at like a business meeting, just like putting like comics on a wall and be like, "Hey, we should pull from
We
this."
should pull from that. I mean, I still want a Darth Vader series since he's so prominent in the comics. I think that'll be cool after Obi-Wan. I still want something
I
like
could
that.
see it. Yeah.
Bring Hayden back, yeah, like show more
Hmm.
of that. Make it like the comics, man. They go into so much mythos. It's really crazy. It's out of this world. You've never seen anything like it in Star Wars canon before.
Yeah, he's so much more powerful in the comics than
Yeah.
we see like live action.
And yeah, and there's a lot of
So,
magic involved too. It's like
mm,
really weird. It's worth kaiju. It's worth showing. Like I think they should like do that.
mhm.
Not make it like Obi-Wan though, because I be honest, if you guys haven't checked out our Obi-Wan review, check it out. But I think we left off with it kind of okay. I forgot our rating. That the last episode was pretty cool, but now it left a sour taste in my mouth after time. It's like, yeah, I'm not a big fan of that show, so I kind of want to see it
There were
redeemed.
moments I liked. I think overall I enjoyed it for what it was. I think the Reva thing kind of like made me like distracted too
Yeah,
much from the main story. And there was just like certain points like I felt like they could have done better. I think just having the Inquisitorius in general in that show kind of like made it lackluster. But I think I did enjoy like at least they brought Hayden Ewan back for like another conversation, and they actually made it make sense because I think that's the big thing we were worried about. Like, how are they gonna make this make sense in the continuity of like New Hope? But it worked out, and I think it was a really maybe not a strong show, but it was a good show. I enjoyed it overall.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah, for
but
sure.
yeah. But yeah, that's all our thoughts for today. Thank you guys so much. If you made it to the end of this video, we have, like we said, we have so much more content planned out for this month and next month, and so much. We have a lot of ideas that we want to bring forth to not just Star Wars fans, but Marvel, DC, and a lot of good stuff as well. So, Akram, if you want to take us away.
Yeah, so again, if you made it to the end, we greatly appreciate you. We love you. We know this is a long episode, but again, we're a podcast, so that's sometimes what we do. We're going to revisit Avatar. I cannot wait for that to come out in theaters. Coming out in a couple days. That's going to be really exciting to revisit. I can't wait for you guys to see the background for that. House of the Dragon is currently like out, and again, we're going to review the whole season for that, like in 1 month or 2 months. We're just really busy, guys. Yeah, we have a lot of content we want to do. We're still reviewing She-Hulk. We got Handmaid's Tale. That's really cool. If you guys want to check out our other Star Wars reviews, we did the Book of Boba Fett. Next, we're going to do the Book of Eli, probably, because that motherfucker had no spotlight on him. So, but and we cannot wait for Halloween. We have Halloween Ends. We have a lot of movies coming out for you guys. So, Dylan, please.
Yeah, guys, we have so much planned. For House of the Dragon and the Lord of the Rings series, if you want to check out our Instagram page, we're actually posting episode by episode mini reviews for that. But we're going to be doing an overall season review by the end of this month or next month for those shows. So we got a lot of coverage for that. Please, if you're following us on the channel, we appreciate you so much. But please, if you're not, give us a like, a follow, a share. Anything helps for our YouTube channel. We're on Anchor, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts as well. We're trying our hardest to get on other platforms as well if you're outside of those. But anything helps, guys, so we appreciate you so much. And until then, may the Force be with you.
And with you.